Hello, everyone. Tyler King here with the Denver Gazette after Colorado's 48-21 victory over UCF here in Orlando at the beautiful FBC Mortgage Stadium. And it was a great atmosphere here on the campus of UCF. The bounce house, as they call it, was rocking despite some weather earlier in the day in the afternoon that caused the game to be delayed, the start of the game to be delayed by about 50 minutes. It was pouring pretty early in the afternoon. Kickoff got delayed about 50 minutes, like I said, to about 2:20 Mountain Time. But I mean, that didn't affect Colorado at all. They came out and they were the dominant team, the better team for the full 60 minutes. Easily the most complete performance for the Buffs of the Deion Sanders era. And it was a very different Deion Sanders in terms of tone after the game that we have seen after some of these big wins. I think coming into today, I would have said the biggest win of the Coach Prime era would have been the TCU game in week 1 last week, where he comes out to the postgame press conference, guns a-blazing. You know, it was a crazy scene. He says, "Do you believe now?" to longtime reporter Ed Werder from the Dallas area, who covered him when Deion was with the Cowboys. I mean, he's going off about receipts and everything after that game. But today was a very different story, despite how well his team played. He did not make this about him at all. He made this about everybody but him, in fact. And it's a very stark contrast to what we saw a year ago. I mean, just think of where this program was 53 weeks ago in week 4 at Oregon last year. He said, "You better get me now because I know what's coming. I know what's coming." And now 53 weeks later, like I said, week 5 of the 2024 season, here's where Colorado is. I thought this game against UCF was going to be a swing game before the season started, one that could determine just how good or how bad this CU team could be. Now, after a huge win, a huge performance like this, the sky's the limit for this team and this program this season. The Big 12 is chaotic just about every week. There's no clear favorite. I guess maybe you could say Utah. Kansas State has had up and down performances. Oklahoma State looks kind of out of it in terms of contending for a conference title. I mean, there are plenty of teams that could get to Dallas for the Big 12 title game in early December, and I don't see why Colorado can't be one of them at this point. I mean, this was a UCF team that was favored by 2 touchdowns, it was 3-0, had the top rushing offense in the nation coming into this game, and Colorado's completely shut them down. I mean, despite the fact that they were outgained pretty heavily in this, or not pretty heavily, but outgained in this game, Colorado was just better coached, which we haven't been able to say a lot during the Deion Sanders era, and they were just flat out the better team. They had better players. And it was surprising to see them dominate on the trenches as well, which has been, they've been getting dominated on the trenches for the better part of 15 years now, just as a program. And it's just a stark contrast to see how far this program has come in so little amount of time, which, I mean, obviously the credit goes to Deion Sanders himself, the guy who is running this program, the guy that brought these players in, the guy that hired these coaches like Robert Livingston, the defensive coordinator, who looks like a real rising star in the coaching ranks, whether he wants to stay in college or go back to the NFL eventually where he came from. He is a very, very talented coach, and it's one that these defensive players want to play for. Cameron Silman-Craig, a safety who had a big 95-yard scoop and score fumble return for a touchdown late in this game that kind of really put the nail in the coffin of this one, was just praising Livingston after the game and the scheme that is built around these talented players. So, yeah, I mean, overall, just an incredibly convincing win, one that I did not expect. I thought the rain might play a little bit more of a factor, and UCF was able to slow the game down a little bit more with the rushing attack. But I mean, they came in averaging, I think, a little bit over 375 rushing yards per game, had 177 today. And that's with a couple big plays and with them with CU kind of taking their foot off the pedal late in the second half, because, like I said, this was not a contest for much of this game. The CU took a 14-7 lead on a bomb touchdown pass from Shedeur Sanders to Will Shepherd, 47 yards out. It came on a 3rd and 15, just showing how aggressive this team is despite the down at distance. And that was it from there. They never relinquished the lead. It's the biggest win of the Coach Prime era at 27 points. The previous high was the 22-point win over Nebraska in week 2 of last season. It's the first time they've scored 40 points in a conference road game since the 2016 season when they made the Pac-12 title game. It's the same time they've had that was also the last time they won a conference game by 20 or more points as well. So I think it's CU's first conference road win since 2007. They had a streak of 13 or so losses and at the end of their previous tenure in the conference. So, I mean, it's just so many superlatives from this game, and it's the players and the coaches that Deion Sanders brought here that that are the reason that this game was won in this decisive of a manner. And I think Deion Sanders recognized that after the game. He could have made this all about him, for sure. I mean, he's done that many times, throughout his CU Buffs tenure as the coach here. Like I said about that TCU game, plenty of other times, that I can mention. But he made this about his coaches and his players, because those are the guys that got it done, and he recognized that as well. And I think he recognizes that this isn't just the biggest game for them. I mean, obviously, it's a huge game for Deion coming back to his home state of Florida. There's over almost 24 players and other additional coaches from the state of Florida on the CU Buffs roster and staff. So a big emotional game, and they delivered. But I do think they feel like there is more to come this season. There's obviously the bye week coming up. They're 4-1 going into that, which is a hugely positive sign for them as a program, that they're in this position going into an important bye week with a very important game coming after that against Kansas State at Folsom Field on October 12th. So, just stay tuned for all my coverage in tomorrow's Denver Gazette and Sunday's Denver Gazette, and throughout the week as we kind of take a little bit of a deep breath and kind of assess where the CU is in terms of the Big 12 picture. I mean, like I said, there's no reason why this team, if they continue to play like they did tonight, can't get to Dallas for the Big 12 championship game, because you look at the schedule the rest of the way. Like I mentioned, Kansas State is up next in 2 weeks. That's a team that's been up and down. They don't look as strong on the road as they have at home at times this season. Maybe the Utah game in November is the one where you're like, CU's probably going to be a pretty heavy underdog in that one, just given the history against the Utes. But every other game, who knows? Cincinnati, Arizona has its weaknesses. Cincinnati is just okay, even though they look better this season. I mean, on and on. You go down the schedule. This is not the Pac-12 that they played in last year, and the reason they went 4-8 and why I thought they would go 4-8 last year. Not only is the talent better, but this is a more favorable schedule, and there's no reason the CU team can't get to 8 or 9 wins. I had them at 7-5 before the season. I'm ready to throw it out the window. I think they should get to more than that. Should surpass that at this point with how well they've played. But now, like I said, they got to play the games, and there's still a lot to come. It is only the end of September. We've got 2 more months of football left to play, but it's going to be a fun 2 months of football, that's for sure. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Stay tuned for all my coverage, like I said, in Sunday's Denver Gazette and throughout the week as we go through the bye week. I'm sure we'll hear from some coaches and players at CU as they kind of take a step back and get ready for Kansas State, because that's going to be a huge, huge game in 2 weeks' time, which obviously I'll be there for, have plenty of coverage from.